Shalom. I want to give over a summary of this week's classes in Sharia Talmud. In Baba Metzia, the third parak, Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, the Mishnah states that one who hands over a behema, an animal, or a kalim to somebody for somebody to watch, and it gets stolen, it gets lost, if that shomer, that person watching it, pays for those things, he will get the kefil. He will get the kanas, the fine that the thief has to pay. Fine. The problem is, the Rashfa states that it appears that we're really talking about a shomer chinam here, and limited to a shomer chinam. Why? Because it says he's the one who's pater b'genev and aveda, if he would take a shavua, and that's what it's referring to. So, if that's true, well, what do we do with Rav Papa, who seems to be saying that this law also applies to a shomer sachar and a shah, to a paid watchman and also to a borrower? It's mashma from the Mishnah. We can infer from the Mishnah that it's only referring to a shomer chinam, and the law would not apply to a shomer sachar and a shah. So the Rashfa comes and he answers that really the Mishnah it's true, the Mishnah is talking about a shomer chinam, but it's a shomer chinam who's negligent. Negligent means that he didn't shomer properly. He left the door open. He didn't do his proper job. If that's true, so you can no longer make the diuk that a shomer sachar, who is also chayiv, would not get the kefil, because the shomer chinam that we're talking about is one who's chayiv. And the shavua that he would have to be taking would have to be a shavua of shekir. He would have to make a vow of a lie. That would also be true by the other shomer. And that's the way that the Rashfa comes and answers. The problem with that is, this is what the Rashfa says, and he wants to actually reject this answer because of that, is it doesn't say negligence in the Mishnah. You're pushing it in. In other words, it says a mafkira or but it doesn't say anything that he was negligent. So why are you assuming it's negligent? Because there's a problem? Okay, it's not written in the Mishnah. The second answer that the Rashfa gives is very, very interesting. He wants to say that this case in the Mishnah is also talking about a case where there's edim, where there's witnesses that state that it was stolen or lost, which means there's edim that the shomer chinam was pater. If that's true, that's why we limited it to the case of a shomer chinam, because it's only in the case of a shomer chinam that the edim are saying that they're pater, that he will get the kefil. For example, if it was a shomer sachar and it was stolen or was lost, so the edim would be saying that he's chayiv, because he's chayiv when things get stolen or lost, and he wouldn't get the kefil. So we were forced to limit the case of the Mishnah to the case of a shomer chinam, because we want to include the case of edim. You can no longer make the diuk that a shomer sachar without edim will not get the kefil. Because the reason we're dafka, it's true, it's mashma dafka, but we're dafka for a different reason. We're specifically talking about a shomer chinam because he's the only one where edim will also, in the case of edim, he will also receive the kefil. The Rashfa has an unstated difficulty on that, and there is, but wait a second, if there's edim, there's no shavua. And it says clearly in the Mishnah that if he takes the shavua, he will not get the kefil. But there is no shavua. So what's going on? So the first answer that the Rashfa gives is that the second half of the Mishnah is talking about without edim. The Mishnah is talking about both. In other words, since the Mishnah is talking about cases of edim and not edim, so when it says if he takes a shavua he's pater, that's just relating back to the case where there's no edim and not relating to the other case. That's the first answer. The second answer that the Rashfa gives is that the shavua in the Mishnah is referring to a shavua shomrim, like Rashi states, which is that he was not pasha, he didn't touch it. V'lo shlach bo yad, he didn't touch it. V'lo pasha, he was not negligent. In conclusion, it comes out that the Rashfa is talking about if you had a case of shomrim that was stating that the person was chayiv, so he would not be able to receive the kefil. The Tosfos learns similar to the Rashfa, but he does not learn there's a difficulty. He says, V'hu adin peshati. It's also true, our Mishnah happens to be talking about a case of a shomer chinam, but it would also apply to a case where the shomer chinam was posheya, where he did not guard properly. If that's true, why doesn't it say the case of a shomer chinam who is negligent in the Mishnah? We would infer that it's not true by a shomer chinam who's negligent. He shouldn't get the kefil. So he should be included in the Mishnah. Why is he not included in the Mishnah? The answer is we wanted to state the more common case. In other words, even if a person is willing to pay and get the kefel, he would prefer to say the thing was stolen or lost. He doesn't want to come straight out and say that he was negligent. There's really no nafkamina, there's no practical difference, so he would prefer to say a tain of geneva. And my son asked the kasha, wait a second, if it's really true that you're telling me to say the chiddush of Pashati is also included in the Mishnah, so you can't just skip it out because you want to say one more common case. It's a bigger chiddush. Now, we learn that from here, it can't be. That it's not a bigger chiddush. Basically, the svara is, anytime a shomer is willing to pay, so the Baal is willing to give him the kefel. He doesn't care that it would have been very difficult for him to not pay the money. He's still willing to give the kefel. Even if, as long as there's a loophole, he's willing to give over the kefel to the shomer. Comes along the Rashfa. The Rashfa seems to be learning like Tosfos, which says that the Mishnah also includes the case of Pashati. If that's true, why did the Mishnah limit itself to Nignavu? It says it was stolen or lost, which seems to be the heter of a Shomer Chinam who didn't say Pashati. Well, that's really coming to exclude the case of Edi Chiyuv. Like we said, according to the Ritzvah, if there's Edom and he's Chayev, at that point the Baal is not really willing to give over the kefil because the Baal figures, hey, I'm going to get the kefil anyway. Why should I give the kefil? Why should I give the double payment to a guy who's Chayev with Edom, with witnesses? I'm going to get the money anyway. The Rashba, though, has a difficulty with this. Why would somebody, the basic svara is, somebody who wants his money doesn't really care what kind of loopholes there are to get out. And he doesn't have in mind, well, now, to exclude the case of Edom. He's thinking, listen, I'm going to give my cow to this guy. If it gets stolen or lost, I want him to pay. I really don't care if he's chayiv. I want him to pay. What if he's chayiv in Edom, which means I'm really going to get my money? He doesn't have that in mind. His basic svara at the beginning is that he wants to receive the Karen from this guy. He's not concerned about whether he'll be able to get it back with Edom or without Edom. And he brings the proof of the Yerushalmi, where there's Edi Chiyuv, where there's Edom that says the Shomer has to pay, and they're discussing there who should get the kefil, the Edom or the Baal. We see from it there is still a possibility that the Shomer will get the kefil, even though there's Edom against him. The problem with that is, if you look on Daf Lamed, Dalet Amud Aleph, where Rev Papa speaks, it's mashma that they only give the kefil to someone who has a way out. Why should I give the kefil to a guy who doesn't have the way out? There's Edom against him. So the Rashba again wants to explain that this idea of pater nafsheya, the ability to get out, was really only the original idea of the Baal. The original decision as to whether I am going to give the shomer the kefel, because that's really when it happened. If you learn the Gemara, you'll see clearly that it had to be up front, that the Baal had in mind that if this thing, this animal that I give to this guy, if it gets stolen and he pays, so then I'm willing to give him kefel. That original decision was based on the fact that he had a loophole, but it didn't come to exclude the fact that other cases where he didn't have a loophole. It was like low plug. I just want my money back. And it will also include anyone who does not hassle him to go to court. Which means even if there's Edom, listen, I don't care. It's true, there's Edom, and I'm going to get my money back. But if you don't hassle me and you just give me the money up front, I'm happy to give it to you. If it's true that we're also talking about the case of Edom, and in such case he will get the kefil, why does the Mishnah say V'nishva v'yotzi? Why does he say he can take a shavua and get out? If there's Edom, there's no shavua. So the same answer we give, like the Rashba gave, which we're talking about shavua shomrim. So now it comes out, basically, that there's a scale. In the case where there's a clear loophole, a legal loophole, and the shomer will not have to pay, so surely if the shomer pays, the Baal is going to give him the kefil. What about in the cases where he has to lie to get out? Okay, it's more difficult for him to get out, but still the Baal will give him the kefil if he gives him the money. Seems like the Rishonim will agree on both as a point. The Machlokas comes out in the case of Edom, Edi Chiyuv. So according to the Rashba, if there's Edi Chiyuv, why should I give this guy who has to pay me because there's Edom, why should I give him the kefil? And the din will not be true. But according to the Rashba, no, even if there's Edom, I'm still willing to give him the kefil because that wasn't part of my original idea. My original deal is anybody who pays me, I am willing to give the kefil. And that's what happened this week.